if I had 500,000 in liquid cash in my bank account when I croaked, what do you think is a reasonable sum for my real estate portfolio to be worth?
This sounds like a trick question. I'm gonna go wild. I'm gonna go really high and say $25 million.
No.
Wait, what? That's not enough? 50 million?
How about $800 million?
Wow. Welcome back to the Promote Podcast, your insider guide to the money and mania of the CRE markets. I'm Hiten Simtani.
I'm Will Krasny, and I enjoyed saying that part last week.
Will is really fond of saying the following: every real estate guy has a lot less cash than you think. It's like one of his pet lines.
Yeah.
And man, we have the wildest illustration of that maxim in Jacob Chetrit. His estate's causing a lot of drama amongst his creditors. We then chop it up on BXP's decision to go vertical in Manhattan, on the latest single malt office building, and why they may not be feeling as nervous as you might think. Finally, another day, another capital G great man passes. Tom Cousins was the king of Atlanta, and a proper man in full.
Saddlebags and all.
Let's get into it. Jacob Chetrit passed a few months ago. One of the girthy lads, one of the brothers Chetrit. And we've talked a ton here about Joseph and Meyer and all the shenanigans that they've been up to. But this was one of the four brothers. Apparently, he was like the quiet force. I believe he was the eldest one, very well respected. The reason we're talking about him today is there was a document called, it ended up in probate court. I don't know how much you know about probate court.
Not a ton, which is probably a good thing.
That is good, yes. You're still alive and kicking. But the reason we know about this document is it was filed as an exhibit in a lawsuit brought by one of his lenders, Richard Mack.
By the way, can I just say Richard Mack in the headshots they're using in The Real Deal, looking very dapper. Like, good for Richard Mack.
So this document surfaces, and God, is that where you got that? So Jacob Chetrit was worth $850 million?
He was worth $850 million and $500,000. Let's not forget the $500,000. You forgot the most important part.
How do you get comfortable with that kind of ratio? You know,
how do you get comfortable with it, buddy? Have you known me for the last 2 years? I mean, good Lord, I had a lower ratio than this until like 2 weeks ago, and I'm still not that far above it. Off the top, let's just say we know that there's some shenanigans here. They're probably paying stuff that they need to pay to try to like bring down the value of the estate.
That's almost preamble for the tree.
That said, yeah, it's stunning. And, again, that's all the cash he has in his name. Like, how much cash is there sluicing?
Mm-hmm.
Good word.
Alert nerd.
Sluicing around the Chetrit web of LLCs that control everything. I mean, who knows? Maybe they sold off another property that didn't tell their lender and tried to repatriate the cash. You never know with these guys. But it's true. Like, real estate, it's so capital intensive. If you really live financing event to financing event, you can find yourself when the capital markets are closed, as they have been for 2 to 3 years for the most part, in a bit of a pickle.
I think of them as kind of the merchant class, the merchant princes, right? They're all about the trade. They're about one deal to the other, etc. And even the innocuous sounding phrase to describe this portfolio is incredible in the surrogate court document. It just says various partnership interests. That's all it says.
I mean, that's basically what it is. Like, there's no organization. It's just this loosely functioning web of LLCs.
Correct.
I think that is the backbone of the Promote Cinematic Universe, which is how real estate has shifted from, these cowboys, the merchant princes,
men with deep pockets,
to the suits. There's a reason. It's because if you get to this scale, you need a real balance sheet. You need a real org chart. You need real infrastructure. And not to say that the Chetrits didn't have any of that, but
they had less of it than others.
Pretty clearly, they had less financial controls than some other firms might have had.
And we should preface this. So a month or so ago, Meyer Chetrit signed a confession of judgment, which is about $22 million that he said that he owed to the estate of Jacob Chetrit. Now, this came up. It was very spicy when it came up. Is there drama between the brother and his late brother's family? However, according to the lenders who are pursuing the Chetrits for various sums of money over various deals, this was a ploy. This was just basically a way to get out of paying them.
I think There's probably something to that. I mean, it sort of seems like someone, I think our good friend, some hotel guy, brought it up on Twitter. They're like, is Meyer just the schnook in all this?
Yeah, he's so buried under PGs. It's a little scary.
But how is it just him? Like, how are they set up? Like, does anybody know? And the guy died. We're not trying to speak ill of him, but again, like, it was good timing.
Pretty sneaky death.
And you can hide these things away and be like, oh yeah, I loaned him, like he loaned me money. Now the estate's forgiving it.
Yeah.
Because now there's all these different tax consequences.
And the estate has first dibs on this money, which means lender, I'm sorry, I don't have enough to pay you.
Yeah, exactly.
We should say that the lenders have obviously taken issue with this. And what they're arguing is the following. They said, this confession is very curiously timed. A, it was signed just weeks after a favorable court hearing for the lenders. B, both the probate petition and the confession of judgment were filed on the exact same day, which the lender characterized as truly remarkable, given that Jacob had died 6 months earlier.
I mean, those things take as long as they take, Etienne.
Do. And then they also said, like, this is just some family self-dealing shenanigans, and it's designed to basically place Meyer's assets behind a priority shield.
Deep NBA cut, but Marcus and Markeith Morris, twins, apparently used to share a bank account, even though they had different contracts. You just wonder, I mean, how, with this sort of web of everything, and like Meyer was the guarantor on the large multifamily property or portfolio that we talked about.
The Tyler Ross one, the giant one, yeah, with the JP Morgan getting involved in the fight. Yeah. We've talked extensively about personal guarantees and bad boy carve-outs and all of that stuff, carry guarantees, etc. It's come up in the case of Tides Equities as well, multifamily syndicator, where, Sean Kia is being sued in one case, Ryan's being sued in another, and then the entity is being sued all over the place, right? So we're seeing quite a bit of this happen with the Chetrits. What I find interesting here, and also rhymes with the whole lenders versus syndicators storyline, is that one lender filed, so Maverick,
the very aggressive Maverick,
David Avram and Ted Martell, they filed and successfully won a TRO against Meyer Chetrit over the same confession in another case in which they claimed that Meyer was trying to do the same thing with their debt, right? And so Richard Mack is essentially just emulating that lawsuit. You're going to see lenders say, oh, this worked, I'm going to go and do the same thing.
As we've talked about, the same net worth and the same liquidity can be pledged on a whole lot of different loans. And so sometimes whoever can have the fastest reaction to lights out
and Formula One goes racing
and make it into turn one.
Massive spin in the middle of the pack as well.
Can be the one who collects judgment.
And I guess it's going to be open season for the lawyers, right? I mean, you basically just copycat the next case and keep doing it.
The Chetrits are going to try to say, we don't have any cash. Like, you can't, like, if we fire sale everything, it's going to materially damage your collection. So give us time to work everything out. And like, oh, maybe they cut rates a bunch of times and like, we kind of get saved.
I just want to know how they came up with this $800 million number. Yeah, they own a shit ton of real estate, but why didn't they go smaller?
They probably have net worth covenants in a bunch of their other loans and they had to have a certain level. The difference between a schlemiel and a schlemazel. The schlemiel is the guy who spills the soup, and the schlemazel is the guy who spills it on.
Oh, yes.
So in this case, I mean, is Mayer the schlemiel or the schlemazel?
I guess we'll find out in court.
Yeah.
We're generally not in the business of lionizing dead men. We're not. We're really not. But it's just been that kind of month. We spoke of Don Sofer. Now we have someone whose career in life is potentially even more interesting. We're talking about Tom G. Cousins of Atlanta, a great man.
The man in full.
Absolute man in full. Where do we begin with this guy? I mean, like, should we put on a white suit and head to Turpentine?
Absolutely. Let's get on our plane and like watch a horse mate. So Tom Cousins, who just died, founder of Cousins Properties in Atlanta, is widely considered to largely be the basis for the character Charlie Croker, the main character in Tom Wolfe's The Man in Full. When you say someone was a movie character or a book character, like this guy actually was. And we mentioned it in our first story, but it's truly the end of an era when guys like this, who in this era has been over for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, he was 93 when he passed. So
yeah, this story of Cousins Properties, though, I think is a really illustrative story of commercial real estate over the last half century.
Cousins today is kind of like a Sunbelt boring office.
Yeah, they own office in like Nashville and Atlanta and like Texas.
Yeah, they're
and
just like IRR risk adjusted returns type.
it's a $4.5 billion market cap. It's well respected.
21 million square feet.
Yeah, it is what it is.
And you can see the air kind of coming out of our voices. It's not like it's not a successful company. It is. But our man, Tom Cousins, was a proper developer, like a buccaneer developer.
I mean, these guys who post World War II are saying, I'm going to go build a bunch of tract homes with no money and sell them for $12,000. And on the back of that, build these massive empires. And the appetite for risk, the just chutzpah, did I pronounce that correctly?
Chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
Well, chutzpah, but it's okay.
Really just the entrepreneurial spirit. He shaped the skyline of a major American city and sort of created it into a major American city.
He did so much. So not only did he develop his own stuff, so he built what later was known as the Bank of America Plaza, which outside of New York and Chicago was the tallest building in the country at the time. He developed CNN Tower, Omni Hotel, an incredible array of properties, but he also set the stage for the modern skyline of Atlanta because of what he did in the Gulch and other neighborhoods as well, where he basically set the stage for now what CIM is doing with the Wrestler, what is it? Centennial Yards.
Yeah. But more so than that, I mean, you talk about people who can create a city out of whole cloth, not just the buildings, because people can build the buildings, but when people talked about Atlanta in the 80s or the 90s, like what they were talking about was the spirit of guys like Tom Cousins.
But I knew one thing I wanted to do. I wanted to make some money.
Totally.
And the guy even had an arch nemesis. I mean, he had Salieri.
I'm so jealous. I told you, I think a couple days ago, I'm like, I wish I had a nemesis. John C. Portman Jr. was basically neck and neck with Tom Cousins. He developed the Westin Peachtree Plaza, Peachtree Center, America's Mart, Truist Plaza, a bunch of things. And these guys were like number one and number two, shifting positions constantly, jockeying for political influence, jockeying to build the biggest, baddest building in the city.
I mean, and Tom, bought the Atlanta Hawks, brought them to Atlanta.
And the Flames, whoever they are.
I have no idea who that are. Calgary Flames?
I believe so.
Really? They were in Atlanta?
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife's Canadian. I should know that.
How much do you know about superstations?
TBS, the Superstation, yeah.
Yeah, so Ted Turner came to our man Cousins and asked him for a sum of money, which he then went and bought the first superstation, and it was essentially the seed of the media moguldom that Ted Turner created.
When you talk about like these types of guys, like, oh man, it's just, there's like a romance to it because everyone knows like if you're an entrepreneur and like, I need a rich guy, and you're like, I'm going to Tom Cousins, or if you were in New York and you're like, I need a rich guy, and you're like, I'm going to Nelson Rockefeller. Like,
right.
It's like one of those things. And it's even better here though, because Tom Cousins made it with his bare hands.
I don't know this for a fact, but I can picture like the multiple waiting rooms outside Tom's office. You see Secretary 1 and then Secretary 2, and then you see a man with his feet on the table and says, yeah, son, what can I do you for?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I could see that.
Totally. And the stories that come out about this guy, first of all, like he generated unbelievable returns. Like when Cousins was a public company and he was running it, he shot the lights out, which is number one. He made himself a ton of money. He made a lot of people a ton of money.
He did.
And you can't, throw a rock in Atlanta without hitting some developer who spun out of there or who was affiliated with him, who made a bunch of money. And then the stories are just, because he's the type of guy who folks who weren't even born when he was in his heyday are like telling Tom Cousins stories on Twitter when he dies. And one that was my favorite, I think Perry Solom said it.
Correct, yeah.
Where they're talking about he's building a new spec tower and
he expects the law firm, like his law firm.
Yeah, he calls his law firm that does all his legal work, and he goes, I want my law firm to do, to take half the space in my new building. Like, well, Tom, like we're really happy with where we are. And he fires his law firm.
Well, you don't cross a man like that. And there's another one, I think he was a pilot. He would like dart in and out of his sights, like Maverick style.
Because I was inverted.
Buzz the tower.
And then just to bring it all home, I mean, he sold what became CNN Center to Ted Turner. He fronted Ted Turner the money in the beginning, but that's not all. There was an 8,800 acre quail hunting ranch that he eventually sold to Ted Turner as well. And that's kind of the Charlie Croker bit right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis for Turpentine, which if you haven't read the novel, he basically takes one of his lenders out to try to convince him to extend him some credit, and it goes poorly.
like a lot of major players at his time, he was kind of at the nexus of money and power in politics. If you wanted to run for mayor in Atlanta, you have to go see Tom Cousins. If you want to be governor, you got to see Tom Cousins, right? Like any conversation at any high office had to start at his office.
Yeah, you want to buy a company, like you got to go to Tom Cousins. I mean, he was like, there are guys like this in almost every city in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, I think one of the most famous stories.
Imagine trying to go around Tom Cousins on a big deal of any kind where you would think he has nothing to do with it.
It's like the Howard Schultz story. That's when he was trying to buy Starbucks and one of his investors went around him. Bill Gates Sr. just like walked into the guy's office and was like, "You're going to leave him alone." Like that's like the Tom Cousins shit. Like that's the same thing. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The nexus of power, money, politics in all these cities, real estate is always the nexus. And we used to have these guys who were the great men who you would go see. And it's, real estate is now a commodity asset class. It's on the backs of all the pension funds, all the sovereign wealth funds, all the people who need to eke out a little 8% return and make their widgets. And that's great. It's created a lot of wealth. It's built a whole industry, but let's pour something out, because at the end of the day, what we all fell in love with is you stare at a huge building in the middle of downtown Atlanta and you think some crazy guy with no money made that happen with his bare hands and with his pure entrepreneurial spirit.
This level of power and influence concentrated in one man does not happen in New York City. It just doesn't. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. And so Tom Cousins is a product of Atlanta. He could have only existed in a place like Atlanta, and he shaped the city as much as it did him. But I do think we should talk about what he did with the East Lake Golf Club and kind of the community redevelopment thing, because that became quite a major prototype for rehabbing, rough communities across the country. And he did that in partnership with a couple of famous guys.
With the Buff Dog himself and the Tiger.
The Buff Dog and the Tiger. So it was Julian Robertson and Warren Buffett. He partnered with them on something called Purpose-Built Communities. And it became kind of a national model for how to tackle rough neighborhoods and how to rejuvenate and revitalize them. So it wasn't just the skyscrapers. This was also another part of his legacy that's important.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the power of the man that the two guys who he got in there are probably much more well-known on a national level than he was, but they came to him.
Did you see the Buff Dog's quote?
Tell us what he said.
He said, "In 94 years, I've met a lot of admirable people and not so admirable people. And I would put Tom Cousins at the top of any list of people I admire."
That says it all. So we talked about one of the capital G great men. Now let's talk about one of the capital G great companies, Boston Properties.
BXP, a former Mort Zuckerman production. The company now known as BXP and run by MSRE Mafia.
Owen Thomas.
Yeah, Owen Thomas is doing something interesting. They've had very mixed results with their journeys into spec office development. If you remember 250 West 55th Street, it wasn't great.
They're famous because they are only in like 5 markets because they said it's going to be impossible to develop in any of them. And so we're going to be the guys who incur all the brain damage.
I went to Reston Town Center and that's basically, it's just they own that place.
Yeah. And they are specialized in urban office development and they are doing this one, 343 Madison, on spec. So what does that mean, Hitan?
So spec means you don't have an anchor tenant in place, which means everything's a lot more uncertain.
So they had an equity partner.
They had the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which I believe is pronounced Norges.
Norges famously owns like 2% of every stock in the world.
Absolutely insane. I mean, the guy who runs it has a very bad podcast, but he's able to get every single player on there because they all take money from him.
Have us on.
Nikolai Tangent.
Nikolai, have us on.
Yeah. Nikolai runs the real estate arm of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It used to be the world's biggest sovereign wealth fund. I think Abu Dhabi has now taken that mantle. But anyway, they've got a lot of money. They are the backers of a lot of major projects across the US and had a big concentration in New York. And they came in here for about $44 million all in. This is all pre-development, right? And this is a complicated one. So how much do you know about kind of the way this is structured? It's a ground lease with the MTA and all that.
Yeah. I mean, another thing, like we are developing in the city with the city, whether you like it or not. But in this case, there really are like related to it with the MTA as well at Hudson Yards, as we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And it's been a long pre-development process. Norgus is now getting bought out.
Basically, what happened was BXP had to make a decision by end of July, and they had to decide whether to pull the trigger on this thing or kind of revert to what it was. And they decided to go ahead, but Norgus said, you know what, we're going to wish you well from the sidelines. And so they had a pretty amicable separation agreement. I mean, BXP basically is recouping Norgus's costs so far.
Yeah, and you might think, well, wow, office New York, like seems like that's a tough business. This is actually a fantastic deal for Boston Properties because there's not a lot of new office getting built, not a lot on Madison Avenue, not a lot being built by guys who are this good at it. So
everyone looks at headlines about Harry Sittimer from SL Green just said, "Oh, when you go to TMZ now, they talk about the office market being in the toilet." However, there is a metric that basically puts all this in context.
Yeah, it's the net absorption.
Yeah, net absorption. So net absorption in Manhattan as of Q2 was at 5.2 million square feet, which is the highest level in a quarter century.
That's a lot of square feet.
That really says something. I mean, basically the office market for the right tenants in the right buildings is more than back. However, there isn't very much new supply. So people who have the buildings can make them work.
I mean, we're basically making offices malls again.
What? Say more.
So malls were the same thing. Everyone in the early 2010s, it was death of retail. You can't own a mall. No one's ever going to want to go to the mall. And people are going to get groceries delivered. They're going to get their haircuts delivered.
The department store is a dying institution. It just is.
That's not true. We were just very over-mauled.
Yeah.
And we had way more retail square footage per person than almost any developed country in the world. And what we found is like the best malls are as good or better than they've ever been.
Look at the CMBS market for those malls. Absolutely ripping.
Yeah, they're incredibly tight. They trade at very tight cap rates. You can get massive amounts of debt against them. What's getting killed, though, are the crappy malls. And so the same thing's happening with office, is that all the bad stuff, the mid-block.
The bottom's fallen out on it. Yeah, there's no way you can salvage it. It's being bought for pennies on the dollar.
By the same guy, by Namdar. Namdar bought all the bad malls. They're buying all the bad office.
That's true.
That stuff also is getting converted. So square footage is leaving, which also helps your net absorption. And so what this means is that people need new office. Office ages worse almost than like any other asset class. It's hugely capital intensive, tenant improvements, leasing commissions, CapEx, just absolutely nuke your free cash flow. And what happens is that they age. And a lot of times, if you're a very in-demand tenant, you can hot potato and find people will beg you.
You can play musical chairs just like 15 Central Park West and 220 CPS.
Yeah, you can get 2 years free rent, $150 a foot TI build out. And these new buildings are, especially in a post-COVID world, like they are amenitized to the nines. They have better circulation.
They're expensive to build.
Yeah, they're hugely expensive.
BXP slating $2,100 a foot to build this thing.
That is crazy talk. That was what like condos were selling in the West Village like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so you might think, why are they going to spec $2,100 a foot to build an office?
Is it spec though?
It might not be.
They're talking about having an LOI with an unnamed financial institution for just under a third of the space. This is just under a million square foot tower. And they're saying that they have a tentative deal or an LOI in place with an unnamed financial institution. Now, we've been told that Bank of America, which is currently at, One Bryant Park?
Bryant Park Tower, yeah.
Yeah, so One Bryant Park, which it co-owns with the Durst organization, they're potentially interested here and might be in the mix.
And there goes your spec.
And it's unclear if the LOI, the 30% mentioned, is basically alluding to B of A, or if B of A has a separate LOI in place or a separate negotiation going on with BXP. But if B of A came, think of that corridor. We talked a couple weeks ago about JP Morgan's Empire Building, Madison Avenue, 383, 390, etc., the Roosevelt Hotel. If B of A comes over, this is going to be like Mega Bank Alley.
I mean, is their market cap's like 1/7 the size, so they get 1/7 the campus? Is that about it?
Let's see what happens. But BXP slated to deliver this thing in like late 2029, which probably aligns nicely because B of A is at the Durst building for at least till 2031, 2033, something like that.
Yeah, so close enough for government work.
How's this all going to go down? I mean, are they going to try to find a new equity partner, or do they not need one if they get this kind of anchor tenant?
I mean, it depends. It's something that's very interesting about the office REITs because, you look at a Vornado versus Related, who we talked about 2 weeks ago. They were not in dissimilar places, I would say, maybe 25 years ago. And Related went one path, Vornado went another. And owning these things outright with no partners is really hard. It is hugely capital intensive. If you're doing a lot of development, the public markets don't necessarily love that.
Yeah.
And you don't have OPM, so you don't have any of those sweet fees in there, and you can't really de-risk it. So BXP, by bringing in Norges, and obviously Norges is leaving, but if you have other equity partners coming in, it lowers the risk to your balance sheet, helps you generate fees, and makes it a little bit more feasible for the public markets to recognize the value.
Makes it more feasible.
Yeah, exactly. They can capitalize that fee stream versus saying like, oh, you're going to hit whatever. This is going to be how many bucks of FFO in 6 years?
We should probably have more spec towers in, right? Given these net absorption stats, like who else is thinking of going vertical right now? I would imagine we need more based on what's going on.
Down at World Trade Center, they've been talking about that last tower for eons.
Larry has been trying to get that built for 20 plus years now.
Yeah.
And there was talk about Amex coming in. Rupert Murdoch obviously left him at the altar. I don't know. He's been trying his whole life to get that built.
Building a spec office tower is something one of the capital G great men would do. And we're seeing BXP do it now, but it may not be so spec.
That's it for the Promote podcast this week. Tom Cousins, a man in full, a true character of characters, one of those developers that minstrels sing about and we sing about as well.
And we bemoan the fact that his namesake company is a boring $4 billion office REIT.
Jacob Chetrit passes and leaves behind a $500,000 bank account and $800 million in a very highly disputed fortune. And finally, BXP is going vertical in Manhattan, trying to see if they can make the spec game work this time.
I think I'd be a little bit more circumspect about that.
We'll be back next week with more CRE Insider goodness.
Please like, share, subscribe, use those scraping tools to constantly ping the algorithm saying you like us. We love doing the show. Real estate is the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. And if you like what you're hearing and want to get in front of our audience, hit us up at partnerships@thepromote.com. That's partnerships@thepromote.com for advertising.
And our median listener actually has more cash than Jacob Chetrit, so advertisers, get on it.
That I can guarantee. Well, that was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.